Abbie Hunt Bryce Home, a volunteer's story. It was a perfect storm. The head nurse on leave, 2 healthcare assistants had not shown up. One admitted to hospital and the other sick. The agency, which would normally step in at this point, had no one to send. One admin was on maternity leave and the other had just left. So on this particular Wednesday, I was met at the Abbie Hunt Bryce Home by its CEO, Madison Gonzalez. And shortly after, she and I would be making lunch for the terminally ill residents as the nurses came and went. For the boss, this is the reality of running the only home for the terminally ill in need in Indiana, and in fact, the only one of its size and scope across the whole of the Midwest region. One day you're organizing fundraising auctions and giving keynote speeches for potential donors, then the next you're doing lift and shift fundraising on the ground, making hot food for the residents, while directing maintenance staff, reading reports, and getting payroll in on the laptop next to you. That said, Abbie Hunt Bryce Home is very much a team effort, from dedicated board members to front and back office professionals, and it's a colossal task keeping the doors open on little more than public donations. It sits just off Keystone, midway between Carmel and downtown Indy. The neighborhood around it is lively and blue-collar, but also hard hit by social dilemmas. It's where you'll find laundrettes, fast food joints, mechanics, banks, and an LA fitness center right next to a methadone clinic. Pulling up outside, a visitor is struck by its beautiful design. High, wide windows and an undulating front lawn with mature trees. It has the feel of an institute of learning, a place of worship, or the spirit of a welcoming home. Inside its walls, in the past 20 years, over 700 critically ill homeless Hoosiers have found a safe harbor to anchor and pause a while on their final difficult journey. The referral specialist, who helps source the patients from across Indiana, says she sometimes finds individuals in a trailer, resigned to die, while others are even completely without abode, quite forgotten. The good news is that once inside, and the anxiety of dealing with their diagnosis alone is relieved, a great many patients have a last flourish of life. Spirits improve, even the rate of decline slows once they are given the physical, mental, and if applicable, spiritual care. The initial task was to help cook and serve food for the residents. First up was Wayne, a man somewhere near 60, very grey in hair, beard and complexion. I entered his self-contained living space, which, as with all Abbie's residents' rooms, has its own door into the ornamental gardens, to find him resting in bed. After introductions, I told him we were making food and we'd bring it in shortly, and did he have any requests? A man of few words, he said, "No, it's okay." However, when I returned, he had pulled himself up and out of his covers and was sat cross-legged in the armchair, waiting patiently for the tomato soup and cheese toasties. Returning a little later, I found he had eaten everything, the mini donuts, the juice and the fresh soup. His plates were clear but for the potato chips. And as he turned to rest once more, I noticed him smile. "You okay, Wayne? Can I get you anything else?" "Oh, no, but thank you. I feel full," he replied with his eyes closing. I feel full, I thought on reflection, was a satisfying sentiment to hear for the both of us. The second patient was an African-American great-grandmother called Miss Barbara. I had met her care assistant Kiki before I met her. She came through the front door not long after I had. Barely into her 20s, Kiki spoke about Miss Barbara and the previous few months' care which she had administered. I saw the same morning light which had illuminated the home's facade minutes before catch a tear in her right eye. It surprised me a little, but it brought home the profound bond which builds between a carer and the cared for. And it was clear that arriving here was revealing a certainty that nothing she did could keep Miss Barbara, her indomitable self, for much longer. I brought some fruit in and chatted for a while at her bedside. Shortly after I had, she patted the covers and said with a smirk, "I ain't dead yet, young man," indicating she wanted me to sit right next to her, which brought Kiki and I into laughter. She spoke proudly of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, one of which was newly qualified as an attorney in Atlanta, the faraway city where her relatives all now lived. Their achievements were her pride, She remarked how she had wanted to be a professor when she was their age, but couldn't afford the higher schooling. Then how she had wanted to join the police force, but their height requirements was 5'3" and up, and she was 5'2.5". And she would go down to the station again and again, but that half-inch never materialized. The force's loss was healthcare's gain, as Miss Barbara went on to work for over 30 years caring for disabled children, from ages 6 months to 21. She said, "I live with my babies. I used to say, why can't I take them home? I care for them 5 days a week, but I wanted them on the weekends." "How did you get back to Indiana?" I inquired. "I lost my son, and my daughter needed me." She then explained how she had cared for her daughter and got stuck here, as she put it. From my experience in the past, I knew this happens a lot. Those who dedicate themselves to care for others often sacrifice everything and end up with almost nothing. At the risk of stating the obvious, making someone feel loved doesn't come with compound interest or an investment portfolio. Midway through the day, I met Deara, a newly hired 17-year-old from a local high school, studying to work on the maternity wards delivering babies. For now, she tends the dying, helping them wash, feeding them, and assisting in their toilet needs. It's a lot for someone not even old enough to drink alcohol, and I'm certain the 17-year-old me could never have done that. And before I left, I saw her going from removing colostomy bags to opening her further education study books. Speaking to Madison, I learned that the mission of her team is not just about the sick. It's also concerned with the trajectory of those from the inner city trying to move forward with their career development. The new CEO greenlit the creation of a school in the rooms unused on the upper floors to train up more care assistants. Getting them qualified and on board is Abbie's future. It's end-of-life care meets start-of-life care, she said. In the third room, I met Scott. He was to make the greatest impact on me that day. I wasn't quite prepared for him, having met Wayne first. Scott was visibly deathly sick. As I introduced myself, he looked at me through sunken eyes, set back into his features. His poor body was skin and bone. Only a Daffy Duck tattoo on his lower leg was still left as a reminder of his former self. His teeth had partially fallen out in places, and on his left side a large wound where a recent operation had removed some internal structures. The hardest part is that he isn't even that old, being only in his mid-30s. I grew up as Catholic, and in the local church St. Peter's just outside London, there was a life-size sculpture of Christ hanging above the altar. Covered in cuts, a wound at his side, and an emaciated body with only a shawl around his waist to cover his modesty. In all honesty, Scott reminded me of that sculpture. At the Abbie Hunt Bryce Home, faith and thought is never hypothetical, as the warmth of the spirit is carried upon the warmth of the smile, and the hand held all the way. It seems an act of insensitivity to say it was hard to see Scott, hard to see as nothing in relation to his situation, his body making a sort of last stand against cancer in that bed. Then surprisingly, when we spoke, he did so in a way that should you close your eyes, you could picture the full-chested Indiana man he once was. I asked him what he wanted, maybe a soft drink. He hesitated and then said, "Perhaps a watermelon Mountain Dew, please." What struck me, as did Madison, was his politeness. He was obviously in great discomfort, and he said please and thank you every time we spoke. I could have gone afterwards and asked around about Scott. I could have found out what his story was and placed it here. Where did he come from? What did the little Daffy Duck tattoo on his lower leg signify? But I decided not to, because Scott had told me all I needed to know about him in those interactions. He had shown me his courage and displayed dignity at death's door. We must all ask, could we show the same courage? Could I face death with the manners of a true gentleman, and be as calm as if it was just a sore ankle which had laid me low? For the Abbie Hunt Bryce Home to keep running, donations are vital. Checks come in from all walks of life, from the well-off to the hard-up small business owners who really can't send much, but they do anyway. Because that's just what you do, providing their kids more than just financial security, but an example of how to be decent. No different than what you'd do if you saw a car crash. You'd get out and help. It's what turns strangers into a community. It's what makes a city more than just machinery operators in a warehouse, accountants and realtors. That value is more than a car to drive or square footage of a house. It's the other thing, as JFK put it. The other thing is that part of us which leaves no record, but in the way others feel or felt. Individuals like Scott reach their end with everything that has actual value: dignity, courage, character, compassion, and self-respect. Soon there will be 3 more bricks in the memorial garden which Abbie Bryce staff and volunteers tend, with 3 new names. Whatever our preconceptions about who would end up in a 3-year point-of-care home, it doesn't take long to realize those preconceptions are without doubt misconceptions, and Old Wayne, Miss Barbara, and young Scott are typical of the remarkable people who come in out of the rain to spend their final days at home, their home. This is then mirrored in the compassion they receive, the dignity they are shown, and the character of the community. The business owners, the teachers, the students, the well-wishers and small business owners who give what they can to keep this beacon of the best of what makes us more than numbers, more than invisible strangers in a queue waiting to buy watermelon Mountain Dew, but what defines us infallibly as human. If you would like to support the Abbie Hunt Bryce Home, then please go to their website at morninglightinc.org.